Turning to politics now, so much going on, and here to discuss, as she always is Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College, the lady in red. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Giselle. Great to see you.
Always. Listen, conflicting narratives coming out on the debt ceiling. President Biden at the G7 saying he is confident a deal will get done. Take a listen.
I'm confident that we'll get the agreement on the budget, that America will not default.
But Speaker Kevin McCarthy, not so confident. Here's what he had to say.
No. The negotiations were stopped. There's nothing moved.
Nothing moved, he says. So where are we, Caroline? The president says he wants a clean debt ceiling raise. Republicans demanding budget cuts that cut to the heart of the Democratic platform. So where does that leave us in reality?
In reality, there's no way we can default. And if we do default, it will likely fall on the shoulders of Republicans. But the reason we can't default and never have, other than the War of 1812 and some debt after that a century ago, is because it's catastrophic, right? Job loss of potentially 8 million jobs. We could see trillions of dollars of wealth lost in the stock market, and over 50% of Americans are in the stock market. It would have global repercussions in terms of borrowing and possible geopolitical effects for countries that see the value in American debt drop. Also, could be a stoppage of payments of Social Security and Medicare. There's just no way we can default. The question is whether or not we will reach a compromise in time for the stock market to not panic like it did in 2011, where we saw almost a 20% drop.
So if there is a deal possible here, both sides have to compromise. That's politics, right? But Democrats don't want cuts to key budget programs. And if McCarthy gives in, he can be ousted from the speakership with that just one vote. So how do both the president and the speaker navigate their parties that are making their demands very clear?
Well, regardless of what they're saying in public, they are working diligently behind the scenes. Their aides are working, even though Biden is in Asia and, of course, cutting his trip short, a very important, significant foreign policy trip he's cutting short. But at the end of the day, there's just no question that they have to compromise. And I would say that McCarthy is in a much tougher position, not only with MAGA Republicans who don't want to compromise, but his tenuous position in that one could remove him or call for his removal of the speakership.
Right. So there are Democratic senators, including Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. They're saying to the president, imploring him, enact the 14th Amendment, which would allow him to raise the debt ceiling without the Republicans. Why wouldn't they do it? What's the argument against that?
Well, it'll be held up in court. It would just be a delay tactic, right? And it may be one that Biden uses. The 14th Amendment says that the U.S. government will not default on its debt. It wasn't intended for this scenario. It was a post-Civil War remedy put into place in case Southerners got in and decided that they wanted to muck up the system by not paying U.S. bills. At the end of the day, it's possible Biden could use this again. It'll be, hung up in the courts and would simply delay the proceeding. But if they ruled that we couldn't default on our debt, then it would change we wouldn't have the scenario moving forward, which would be great.
Right. All right. I want to turn now to chaos at the Capitol after House Republicans refused to expel embattled Congressman George Santos. Take a listen to this.
Expel him. You got to save the party. The party's hanging by a thread.
We got to get rid of Biden.
The party is hanging. The party's hanging by a thread. You got to save the party.
Politics in full display. What do you make of that? The vote to save Santos may save the slim GOP majority, which seems to be all paramount. But does it stain the party in the long run, the GOP?
It really feels like we're in the British Parliament there with them yelling at each other. Of course, it's on the steps of the Capitol. I don't think that most Americans will understand that by sending it to the House Ethics Committee, that this is a delay tactic to kick the can down the road. I think that Republicans will have enough cover here that it won't affect them politically, because I do think Santos at some point will be removed. So I don't think this harms the Republican Party.
All right, let's turn to Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation. It is heating up, with the National Archives now handing over all these records that may provide critical evidence showing the former president did know. He was fully aware of the declassification process. How bad for the former president?
Yeah, of course he was aware. It's part of the onboarding. It's part of the training for the presidency. These documents would confirm that what Trump has been claiming in public, that he could simply declassify within his head because he's the president, is something that he knowingly was being, not transparent, or it was basically lying. Let's call it what it is.
Plain and simple. So Adam Schiff and others who repeatedly claimed evidence of Russian collusion, they're now denouncing that John Durham report as flawed, saying it was partisan. But of course, the former president saying it's total vindication. So which is it, Caroline?
I think it's neither. The Durham report is the fourth report looking at possible Russia collusion with the U.S. in the 2016 election. And Durham finds that, yes, there was enough evidence to do a preliminary investigation, but that there was some bias moving it to a full-blown investigation. But he didn't file any criminal charges, which means he didn't believe that it was an intentional arose to that occasion. So Schiff is somewhat, confirmed in that, but also Donald Trump is not vindicated. We know that Russia did interfere in the 2016 election. And we know that on national television, he called for them to do that by hacking Hillary Clinton's emails. So I think there's a bit of both sides here.
Right. All right. Senator Dianne Feinstein returns to Washington, as you know, after a couple of months battling shingles. And she made a comment to reporters that suggests she didn't recall being absent for the past 3 months. Take a listen.
I haven't been gone. I've been working.
You've been working from home, is what you're saying?
No, I've been here. I've been voting.
Her staff has refused to comment, and giving those comments some kind of context. What do you make of that? What has to happen here?
Well, I think it confirms a report in a major newspaper from last year that she's having some pretty significant memory issues. The reporter pushed for clarification, and she confirmed that, no, she didn't recall that she hadn't been there for the past 3 months. At this point, I know her staff is working overtime, and people in California are being well represented because mostly staffers do the work anyway. As a former staffer, I can confirm that. But at this point, I think they should be looking at legacy.
Yeah, that was a really tough exchange to watch. All right, Ron DeSantis in Iowa. He's expected to finally announce his run for president. This is coming next week, we're told. But he's running 20 points behind, as you know, from Trump in the polls. And he's now just signed a slew of anti-gender right measures into law and is touting his 6-week abortion ban. He's doubling down, trying to outflank Trump on the right. It doesn't seem to be working so far if you look at the polls. But can this strategy gain traction long term?
I don't think so. I think Trump is right in that he owns abortion. He moved very quickly to make sure that the court would overturn abortion. In fact, that was something that was planned in the 2016 campaign trail when Merrick Garland wasn't being seated. That was a long-term plan to overturn Roe. That was the intention there. And Trump owns these issues. So I doubt that DeSantis can make up that ground. But, we have a couple of years here. Let's see what they do.
Couple more years of all of this. Never a dull moment, right? Having fun yet, Caroline?
Already 2024 presidential election.
Keep the tequila handy. All right, Caroline, thank you so much always for your great perspective and context on these very complex issues.